Thank you. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Committee. The agenda, papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available on the for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. Please remember that your words and actions should be chosen carefully, and members are reminded that speeches are limited to 3 minutes. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Other attendees are permitted to photograph and record the meeting, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please identify yourselves so that anyone who intends to record the meeting can be made aware. There's no one. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, members could speak as clearly as possible and keep background noises to a minimum, and ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent. Welcome to all those in attendance. I now ask Ms. Gibbons to introduce the officers for this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Kelly Gibbons. I am the Development Management Service Manager. To my left, we have Georgina Coley, who's our legal advisor today. To my right, presenting item 6 is Adam Lewis. We also have Jill Tukey-Williams from the Local Highway Authority, and then presenting items 7 and 8, Ollie Jones. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we move to the actual agenda. Item 1 is apologies for accidents. We have received apologies from Councillor Simeon Cole and Councillor Claire Davies. Can I just say that Claire, following the site visits yesterday, had a serious accident following that, and she is in hospital at the moment. She had to be cut out from her vehicle. It was quite a serious accident, but having said that, she was in contact with the planning department whilst being cut out of the vehicle to give her apologies for not being able to attend. And Ms. Gibbons and myself had a conversation with her from her hospital bed yesterday. So if she is watching, and there is a very strong chance that she's watching from her hospital bed, can we all wish her well and hope for a speedy recovery? Thank you. We have no name substitutes under item 2. Can I ask then if there are any declarations of interest? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'd probably speak on behalf of most of us here that I've received a very lengthy email from an objector to item 7, also a lengthy letter from the applicant in favour of item 7, and also a email last evening from a council member from the adjoining ward advising us to pay attention to the paperwork. There's no problems with that. I just thought everyone should know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Now I will move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of July. Are those meetings of the 30th of July approved? Please can members raise their hands if they approve of those minutes.
Okay.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention, obviously not here. Right. I've got no chairman's announcements other than to wish Councillor Davies a speedy recovery. We'll now move on to, can I now request that the speakers present in person for agenda item 6 join the meeting. Mr. Rawlings, please take a seat at the public participation table. Good morning and welcome, and I'll call you to speak when after the officer's presentation. Thank you. Mr. Lewis will make the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So this item is following a deferral from earlier committee. It's the application for the erection of 31 key workers' dwellings, including access from Clubtail Drive with associated infrastructure and landscaping. Just to cover the updates, we have received one more representation since the report was published. It doesn't raise anything additional that's not already covered in the report, and there are no changes to recommendation. Officers are also aware that members have received a advisory note from the applicant. We received the same note, and again, it's very similar to what's in the application pack already, so it doesn't raise any additional points, so no overall changes. We're just having an issue with the presentation, I believe. Bear with. Oh, here we go. Apologies for that. Okay. So hopefully members will recall that a full appraisal of the application was provided at committee on the 4th of July. The application at that point was recommended for approval by officers. However, members resolved to defer the application for the reason which is on the screen, which I just will repeat. It was resolved that the application be deferred to enable a reconsideration of the plans, particularly to secure the introduction of additional landscaping measures along the northern and eastern edges of the site, alongside any layout and design changes considered necessary to facilitate this, to ensure that the scheme assimilates appropriately into the local context whilst delivering enhancement of green infrastructure as required by policies LD1, LD2, LD3 and SD1 of the core strategy. So in response to this deferral, the applicant has provided amended plans which are now before you for consideration. It's been reasonably assumed by officers that members concerned relate solely to what the issues that are highlighted in the deferral reason, and the scheme is otherwise regarded as being acceptable in all other respects. As such, we won't repeat a full appraisal of the scheme here. The officer report from the 4th of July still applies in the most part, and a copy has been provided as an appendix to today's report. So today's presentation will instead just focus on the changes that have been made in respect to landscaping and the material planning implications arising from those changes. Next slide, please. Thank you. So to just remind members of the issues, the main concerns related to the northern part of the site, the key area being highlighted by the red oval on the plan above. The minutes of the debate from the previous meeting recorded that members felt there was insufficient planting along this boundary with the Park and Chew site, which risked the development appearing overly harsh when viewed from this direction. There was also a concern that the scheme placed too much reliance on planting that would be provided as part of the Chew's development, despite the delivery of that being uncertain and which could not be secured as part of this application. Next slide, please. The slide above shows the previous and amended landscaping plans for the relevant area of the site. Members will note that the two apartment buildings have been shifted slightly further to the west by about 2 metres, creating space for a stronger landscape buffer to be provided on the east side of the buildings. The landscaping buffer is shown on the right-hand side of the screen, and the additional features highlighted there. It's noted that the changes to the siting of the building have also necessitated a minor reconfiguration of the access and the parking layout. In terms of the amended approach, the scheme includes shrubs to the foot of the buildings, ornamental hedging on the north and east boundaries, interspersed with columnar trees, and a feature canopy tree in the northeast corner of the site. Next slide, please. This slide shows the updated 3D visuals of the development from its eastern frontage. It's highlighted that these visuals no longer place any reliance on planting that may be provided as part of the Park and Chew's development, with the only features being shown being those that can be provided within the site itself. In the view of officers, this amended scheme is an appropriate response to members' earlier concerns. The scheme has favoured narrow fastigiate trees in recognition of the relatively limited amount of space available, and the species mix is appropriate to the site context. In combination with the feature trees at the top corner of the site, it would achieve the goal of softening the development's appearance whilst providing meaningful new tree cover that is beneficial to biodiversity and to the amenity of residents. The Council's landscape officer has supported the amendment, subject to additional conditions being imposed to secure a bespoke planting methodology and an enhanced maintenance period of 15 years. This condition will also require that any failures within that period are replaced. These requirements are captured in conditions 11 and 13. Next slide, please. In terms of any wider implications, it's been acknowledged that the apartment buildings have been moved slightly to the west. However, the extent of the change is minor and would not significantly impact upon the appearance of the development as a whole or upon neighbouring residential amenity. The two versions of the sectional plans on the top of the screen demonstrate the limited differences between the plans in this sense. There's also been some minor changes from a highways perspective, which is shown on the bottom of the screen. The access to the northern parcel of the site has been moved approximately 7 metres further to the west on Clubtail Drive, and the internal parking layout has been reconfigured. The Local Highways Authority have reviewed this and have no objections, confirming that the access arrangement still remains within standard, that the internal layout provides sufficient manoeuvring space and parking is maintained at a space of one space per bedroom in accordance with the NDP. The changes do not give rise to any further material planning implications that have not already been considered in the earlier officer report. Next slide, please. So, to summarise, the revised approach is considered to address the concerns of members' early deferral. It ensures the scheme integrates better into the surroundings and provides meaningful new tree planting through a landscaping scheme which can be secured by condition alongside the management of this. In the wider sense, it's reiterated that the scheme delivers benefits in the form of affordable and tenure-restricted accommodation to meet the needs of military personnel, which are defined by the MPPF as essential local workers. There's been no significant harm identified as a result of the proposals and no objection received from any technical consultee. Subject to the completion of a 106 agreement, therefore, to secure the restricted nature of the accommodation, in line with the recommendation on the screen, the proposal is considered to be in general accord with the development plan and recommended for approval accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Now can I invite Mr. Hubbard, the local resident who spoke at the Planning Committee on the meeting on the 4th of July, has chosen not to take a speak at this meeting. Can I now invite Mr. Rawlings, the applicant's agent, to speak in support of the application? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors and officers. Needless to say, we took away and reflected on the discussion at your 4th of July Planning Committee meeting, and in particular the clear direction in your deferral decision for Bloor to reconsider the submitted plans to secure additional landscape measures along the northern and eastern boundaries of the proposed development. As you will have seen from your officer's report, and hopefully if you had a chance to review our landscaping cover note, through layout adjustments to the siting of the proposed 3-storey apartment blocks, an internal reconfiguration of the access drive to the northern development parcel, and the repositioning of a number of car and cycle parking spaces plus a bin store, a landscape strip has been created within the eastern and part northern boundary of the application site. Our revised landscaping scheme now provides for a continuous ornamental hedge around the north-east boundary of the site, interspersed with 14 new trees. In this respect, I would highlight the helpful advice of the Council's landscape officer as to the appropriate species and planting arrangements for this boundary location. It follows that the approach taken is for a row of columnar trees with smaller ornamental trees set within the gaps to provide variation, interest and colour, with a display acer at the corner of the site with hedgerow way. Notwithstanding the planting arrangements have been specified to avoid affecting foundations, we note your officers propose a specific pre-commencement condition upon any forthcoming planning permission to submit a bespoke plan and planting specification for these trees. This is appropriate and accepted. Notably, I can also confirm that the landscape arrangements have been planned and designed with no cumulative reliance placed upon any landscaping within the neighbouring Park and Chew site. Therefore, should the Park and Chew site be brought forward by the Council in future, any associated landscaping will be additional green infrastructure. I hope that the revised landscaping details, as informed and influenced by the advice of your officers, demonstrates a considered and constructive approach taken to address councillors' concerns and will enable you to support our application this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll move on to the local ward member, who is Councillor Cornthwaite. He speaks first and then has the right to speak at the end of the meeting. He has a 10-minute time limit. Councillor Cornthwaite.
Chair, fellow councillors, don't think I'll be anywhere near 10 minutes. But thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the planning application 243045. I do so not to oppose development, but to uphold the principles of sound planning, community safety and moral responsibility. This application still proposes that all traffic, residents, visitors, service vehicles and emergency responders enter and exit via Clubtail Drive, a single residential road already serving the Hereford Point development and the Park and Choose site, is being asked to absorb yet more pressure. This is not sustainable, it is not safe, and it is not fair. Let us remember that Clubtail Drive was never designed for this level of traffic. It is a quiet residential street, not a strategic access corridor. The cumulative impact of this and other developments will turn it into a bottleneck, one that compromises emergency access, pedestrian safety, and the quality of life for existing residents. And while the application is framed as providing housing for key workers, we must be honest about the context. These are Army personnel whose base is just 4 miles away. They already have access to secure accommodation and infrastructure tailored to their needs. This development does not address an urgent housing shortage. It relocates a population that is already well served. The Herefordshire Core Strategy calls for sustainable, inclusive development. This proposal fails that test. It isolates rather than integrates. It burdens rather than balances. It does not offer resilience, it offers risk. And so I turn to a guiding principle from Scripture in Micah 6:8, where we are reminded, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Acting justly means protecting those who will bear the brunt of this decision. Children walking to school, elderly residents crossing the road, families whose daily lives will be disrupted. Loving mercy means listening to the voices of those who feel unheard. Walking humbly means acknowledging that progress must be thoughtful and not rushed. And I sincerely believe that this application has yet again been rushed. I urge the committee to reject this application until a viable, safe and equitable access plan is presented. Let us not defer our responsibility. Let us not compromise our standards. Let us act with courage, clarity and compassion. This is not just about roads and houses, it's about responsibility. We're called to act justly, to love mercy and to walk humbly. Let's not approve a plan that burdens the many for the convenience of the few. Let's insist on better. Before I close, I must raise a procedural concern that cannot go unmentioned. This application was placed on the agenda with undue haste, without affording the parish council the time to meet, discuss and formally respond. The planning officer knew full well that the parish council would continue to object, yet the process was accelerated in a way that sidelined their voice. This is not just discourteous, it undermines the integrity of our planning system. Local councils are not a formality, they are the foundation of community representation. To bypass them is to bypass the people. You say Mr. Hubbard isn't present today, and I can totally understand why he chose not to. He received an email which told him, as you'll be aware, the access to the Park and Choose site via Clubtail Drive was approved as part of P201446/RM in April 2021. As members were advised at the last meeting hearing, that matter is now fixed and the planning authority is not entitled to reconsider it as part of the current application for the MOD accommodation. On the first point, when a planning permission is granted, there then follows a 6-week period within which a claim for judicial review can be lodged. It goes without saying that that period for challenging the decision made in 2021 has long expired. It also worth noting that a judicial review claim can only be made to challenge the legality of the decision-making process itself and is not intended to as a means to challenge the planning merits of the decision. Highlighting the courts very rarely interfere with matters of planning judgment, such as whether an access arrangement is acceptable or not, unless the decision is so irrational that no reasonable authority could have reached it. I want to point out that before the housing was built into Clubtail Drive, that was when this decision was made. No resident of Clubtail Drive could have even known that this was going to be part of what they were facing. On the second point, there's no process through which residents could now readily seek to challenge or amend the earlier decision. In the interest of full disclosure, there is a power available to councils and the Secretary of State to revoke or modify planning permission. However, this intervention is seldom used, as the law is clear that it can only be justified in exceptional circumstances, and if the original decision is judged to be grossly wrong. The council does not consider that applies here. I question the council has already made that judgment that it does not apply to Clubtail Drive. Why would Mr. Hubbard take time out this morning to come to a meeting where the council has already decided? And that's my submission.
Thank you. Can I now invite debate? Councillors. No, Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the applicant and to the ward member for their passionate speech on that. I totally comprehend what my colleague is saying about frustrations with the access arrangements, but as he has so eloquently already explained, we are not able to revisit that access. Originally, it was going to have up to 350 cars coming through for the park and ride. So this should mean less vehicles coming through. However, going back to why we deferred this application, it was on the landscape and setting, hedgerow planting grounds. I feel that the developer has made, within the very tight constraints of that site, a really good effort at thickening up and softening that boundary. I think the tree planting now presents a much more pleasing vista into the site, but equally for the residents or future residents of particularly Albany and Adeline apartments. There really is a need in Hereford for this accommodation type. It's been proven, and there is also then the potential to free up this accommodation that is currently being used within town for other individuals and families not connected with the military. So I feel that the issues that we brought the deferral for have been appropriately considered, applied and dealt with. And I would be recommending that we approve this application. Thank you.
Is that a proposal?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Baker. Do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As we've heard, that this was deferred basically just for landscaping concerns, and we all agreed to that deferral, which means that there were no other objections to the actual development itself, which is somewhat of a fait accompli, really. We're stuck with it. Can I refer you to the photographs, or rather the amended visualisations? There was two photographs together on the same slide. If we just pop that up just briefly. That's the one. Thank you. Thank you for that. You'll notice from this visualisation that those trees are completely blocking the ground floor windows, which means that any poor souls living in the first floor and the ground floor won't have any light coming through. So can I just just be assured that this is just merely a visualisation and not actually how it will look at the time, because I wouldn't want to live in those places with all that greenery outside my window. But apart from that, I've got no other objections to this application, and I confer that I second the motion to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any other speakers? Councillor Andrews.
Actually, I would have said that the trees covering a large part of the rather unappealing blocks of flats were a blessing rather than anything else.
A matter of taste. Right. Are there any other speakers? Then we've had a proposal and it's been seconded. Can I ask that the local member wishes to say anything?
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we now move to a vote? I don't think the officers need to say any further. Right. Those in favour, please indicate.
12 in favour.
Anyone against? Abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. We'll have a 5-minute break while we change speakers and etc. And we'll go to the next item then. online. Can I ask that please come to order? Right. We're live. Can I now move on to the application number 7, land south of Leiden Way and east of Dimmock Road, Ledbury. A hybrid planning application comprising an application for full planning permission for the erection of a day nursery, use class E, a food store, use class E, including access, car parking and landscaping associated, and an application for an outline planning permission for erection of a medical centre, use class E, in excess determined and to be determined, and all other matters reserved. Can I now move to the officer's presentation? Mr. Jones.
We have a public speaker.
Oh, sorry. Could the public speaker please take their place? We have, I believe, Mr. Mitchell, please. Welcome to the meeting. I will call you to speak when the officer has made his presentation. Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you for those that attended the site visit yesterday morning. Hopefully you found that most helpful in terms of contextualising the site. So, as you can see on the screen and as summarised by the Chair, this is application 242783. It's a hybrid planning application comprising an application for full planning permission for the erection of a day nursery. This falls within use class E F, a food store, use class E A, including access, car parking, landscaping and associated works, and then also an outline, also seeks outline planning permission for the erection of a medical centre, and that falls within use class EE, with access to be determined at this stage, and then all other matters reserved. And it's at land south of Leiden Way, the A417, and to the east of Dimmock Road, the B4216 in Ledbury. I would just draw members' attention to the additional letters and representations made with respect to this item since the publication of the report pack. That's set out within full in your committee update sheet. I won't go into that in detail. There are some officer responses provided where appropriate, but I trust that members have digested that. So, if you could have the first slide, please. Thanks. So on the slide, you can see the location of the site identified by the red star. The site is located to the south of the full picture roundabout, to the south of Ledbury. You'll note the full picture public house lies to the north of Leiden Way, with the Hawks Rise residential development to the east and commercial uses to the west of Dimmock Road. Next slide, please. So, just an aerial view of the site, kind of a irregular triangle site, bounded, as I said, by Leiden Way to the north and Dimmock Road to the southwest. And again, clearly you can see that existing residential development to the southeast and those commercial uses to the west. And then next slide, please. I think we will have the location plan. So it shows the site and its boundary outlined in red. The next slide, please. So this shows the proposed site-wide master plan. You'll make out the access to the site would be via a new junction taken from Dimmock Road to the west, with the internal road then serving each individual use that is proposed as part of the application. 2 pedestrian and cycle links are proposed to be taken from Leiden Way to the north, and a toucan crossing is also proposed there as well, and we'll touch upon that in a little bit. So yeah, as stated, the proposal comprises three individual elements. So if we have the next slide, we will look at that first. So firstly, a food store is proposed in full, located at the northern part of the site, and is proposed to provide a net sales area of 1,100 square metres. The store would be served by 101 parking spaces to the south and west of the building, including disabled bays, parent and child spaces, and EV charging points. And then the service yard associated with the store would be located to the building's east. And then the next slide should have the proposed elevations. So the design includes red brick with green living walls and a monopitch roof. Opening hours proposed from 8 till 10 Monday to Saturday and 10 till 4 on Sundays. And then if we go on to the next slide, so this looks at the day nursery that's also proposed in full and are located to the immediate east of the proposed food store. So this is meant in full and will provide a 2-storey building with outdoor play space and its own dedicated parking as well. Next slide, please. So that just shows again the proposed elevations of the nursery building. Next slide, thank you. So third element of the proposed development, the application seeks outline permission, as I've stated, for a medical centre. So with access to be determined at this stage and all other matters reserved. So you can see the formation of the access of that internal access road. And then, as shown on the plan at this stage, that is indicative and merely sets out how development on that site could come forward with respect to those reserved matters that would be made at a later stage. Next slide, please. So this shows the access in more detail, the access plan, how vehicles would enter and exit the site, so taken from Dimmock Road. This has been subject to swept path analysis and has been amended as part of the application to ensure that larger vehicles, such as those delivery vehicles serving the food store, can pass safely and that appropriate visibility onto Dimmock Road can be achieved. Next slide, please. So I've referred to the proposed pedestrian cycle links off Leaden Way. This shows the northern part of the site and those links to the site. So there'll be 2 at either end, one to the west serving the food store, and then one to the east serving the nursery and also the proposed medical centre as well. You'll also note the toucan crossing and bus stops indicated. The details of this would be subject to the technical approval process as part of Section 278 agreement, but there are conditions that require these works are implemented prior to first use of any part of the development. Next slide, please. So just going into a few photographs. This is looking from the full picture roundabout, sort of in a southeasterly direction. You can see the site boundaries here as they look across the roundabout, Leaden Way in the background to the left and then Dimmock Road to the right, and you can see the existing vegetation and hedgerow boundaries there, but clearly very much a sort of gateway site. Next slide, please. This looks across the site to the east, but from Dimmock Road, and it's around this point that we were yesterday, and in which the access to the site would be taken. You will make out in the distance, not particularly clear on this photograph, but you will see the recently completed development at Hawks Rise, which sits to the east at slightly higher elevation to the site. Next slide, please. And then again, from similar positions in terms of where we were stood yesterday, this is looking from the Hawks Rise site across its open space back towards the site and with Dimmock Road in the background and some of those commercial uses that lie beyond as well. So the site is essentially level, slopes slightly to the to the west, and again is, as I said, bound primarily by much or hedgerow boundaries. I think the next one is the last photograph. Yeah, so this is just looking west along Leaden Way, and then the site would be located to the left, so to the south of Leaden Way. And it's from here that those pedestrian and cycle links into the site would be taken. And again, in terms of where the two crossing and bus stops installed as part of the proposal would be located, again through that technical approval process, but secured by planning condition. Next slide, please. So, summary of the main issues. They are obviously set out in full within the officer report. I will touch upon some of the key issues as part of the presentation. In terms of the principal development, as members will be aware and set out in the report, the previous scheme was refused on the grounds of an identified significant adverse impact on the vitality and viability of Ledbury Town Centre. That decision was upheld at appeal, with the inspector particularly concerned about trade diversion from the town centre and lack of certainty around the delivery of the medical centre element. On this particular point, I would draw members' attention to paragraph 3.2 of the officer report. It importantly sets out some of those material changes in the context in which this application is to be considered following the appeal decision and the local planning authority's previous consideration of that application. Since the 22 appeal was dismissed, there have been material change in the policy context. Most notably, the Ledbury Neighbourhood Development Plan was adopted in June 2023. The application site is now allocated under policy EE 1.2 for small employment and service uses, including medical centres and nurseries. Whilst retail is not explicitly listed, it is not considered to be precluded, and the NPPF does state that alternative uses can be supported on allocated land where they meet an unmet need. Again, talking about what has changed, in this case, the Herefordshire Town Centre Retail Assessment, published in 2022, and published, importantly, since that previous appeal decision, identifies both a quantitative and qualitative need for additional convenience retail provision in Ledbury. This is an updated evidence base, and combined with the revised NDP allocation, represents a significant shift in policy context compared to the previous application. Furthermore, the scale of the food store in terms of net sale of floor space has been reduced down to 1,100 square metres, as already stated. So again, whilst retail is not explicitly supported, the NPPF does allow for alternative uses where they meet an unmet need. And on that point, the Herefordshire Town Centre Retail Assessment identifies that clear need for additional convenience and retail floor space within Ledbury. In terms of the sequential test, that has been considered to be robustly applied. The applicant has assessed all known alternatives and none were found to be suitable. The conclusion is consistent with the previous appeal decision, and the view is taken that the test is passed. So turning to retail impact, it's clearly been a principal issue in consideration of this application and has been subject to detailed scrutiny and independent review. Again, the proposal is materially different from the previously reviewed scheme. The food store is small in terms of net sales floor space, and the retail impact assessment draws on the council's most up-to-date and recent evidence base, the Herefordshire Town Centre Retail Assessment. It incorporates the latest sales density benchmarks, which are widely accepted industry standards for estimating store turnover. These, along with the other inputs, have again been confirmed by the council's retail consultant as being robust, appropriate and consistent with best practice. The cumulative impact on the town centre is assessed as -4.3%, and the view is taken that that is not considered to be significantly adverse. Ledbury Town Centre is considered to remain resilient with a diverse offer of vacancy rates below the national average. Oops. Sorry about that. The health check undertaken as part of the assessment supports this and addresses previous uncertainty around town centre resilience during the pandemic period. Taken together, the updated evidence, reduced net sales floor space and independent review confirm that the proposal passes both the sequential and impact tests, and this is materially different from the previously refused scheme. Turning to the medical centre, the medical centre is proposed in outline and can be supported in principle since a Class EE use is supported by the NDP on this site. Crucially, given that the applicant now controls the site, the proposal is now able to include a Section 106 mechanism to secure the delivery of the medical centre, which was previously presented as a benefit, but again lacked any sort of binding commitment as to how that could be delivered, and that was a point that was raised by the inspector. So in this case, the agreement would require the applicant to transfer the land within 3 years to a medical provider. Within 3 years as well, an application would then need to be made for the remaining reserve matters, so the scale, appearance, layout and landscaping. So it's important to note that whilst the use cannot be restricted explicitly to a GP surgery alone, the proposal falls within that wider use class EE and again is supported by the NDP's allocation. But I think it's important to note that obviously this element of the proposal would give the opportunity for enhanced healthcare infrastructure within Ledbury. In terms of the nursery, again, supported in principle, given the policy and the allocation support such a use, and would provide, again, a valuable community facility for Ledbury, as well as noting the recent housing development close to the site as well. The design and layout of that element is considered appropriate, and mitigation measures with respect to noise are captured by conditions. Next slide, please. So just turning on to kind of design, landscape, and visual impact. As your members will have picked up yesterday, the site is considered to serve a gateway location. The proposal, as I said, includes red brick and green wall materials for the food store, and the nursery design is considered befitting of its function and its context. The proposal includes hedgerow retention and management, as well as tree planting and biodiversity enhancements through the full elements. The landscape officer supports the scheme, and the submitted environmental colour assessment confirms that a contextual design approach that has been taken through the preparation of this application. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, not next slide, back. Not quite there yet. So in terms of access and highways, the scheme, as I said, includes a revised access from Dimmock Road. Again, that's been supported by the swept path analysis to demonstrate that safe tracking of the larger vehicles. Appropriate parking is to be provided, and there is a parking management plan as well, which will look at how any additional requirements for parking at the nursery is accommodated across the site. And again, in terms of the medical centre, the quantum of parking will be dependent on the scale of what comes forward, and will be considered at the RM stage. Toucan crossing and new bus stops are to be provided for Leaden Way to enhance connectivity into the site from the wider area. Additionally, a 100,000 Section 106 contribution has been sourced for accessible transport. So that would be provided in the way of an electric wheelchair accessible vehicle and associated infrastructure as well, so EV charging, and that would be delivered as part of a project, and the details of that are set out within the published draft heads of terms and as outlined within the report as well. In terms of ecology and biodiversity net gain, the proposal includes hedgerow reinforcement, provision of living walls, bird, bat, insect, hedgehog boxes to be provided, and there is a hybrid BNG strategy which includes off-site unit purchases. Again, conditions secure compliance with the Environment Act and the BNG regs, and other associated conditions with respect to details of ecology enhancements. In terms of flooding and drainage, the site lies within flood zone 1. The layout has been amended slightly as part of the process to have regard to a very small area at risk of surface water flooding to the far western end of the site. So the car parking has been pulled out of that area. In terms of the surface water strategy, I know that's a point that members identified on site yesterday, having regard to the change from clearly it being Greenfield site to the proposed extent of the car parking. This has been reviewed by the council's land drainage team, the lead local authority, and Severn Trent. Condition 11 within the report is a pre-commencement condition, and it would pick up the details of that strategy. So just to be clear, it would require the submission of a detailed drainage design, so drawing and construction plans for both the surface and foul water systems, which in terms of the foul drainage design at least would need to be developed in conjunction with Severn Trent Water. But in terms of surface water, confirmation and acceptance of the proposed surface water discharge to the public surface water sewer from Severn Trent at the appropriate rate, and as well confirmation of the proposed adoption arrangements as well. So to sum up, the application has been subject to scrutiny and independent review. It is materially different from the previously refused scheme. The food store is smaller in terms of its net sales floor space, and the retail impact assessment has drawn on the council's most recent and up-to-date evidence base. The proposal is therefore considered to pass both the sequential and impact tests, with a town centre impact not considered to be significantly adverse. The methodology has been independently verified. The town centre remains resilient, with vacancy rates, as I've said, below the national average, and a diverse retail offer. There are no outstanding technical objections from statutory consultees, and matters such as highways, drainage ecology, and design and visual impact are considered to be acceptable. Taken together, the proposal represents sustainable form of development that is found to accord with the relevant policies contained within the development plan. The officer recommendation is therefore to approve, subject to conditions and completion of the Section 106 agreement as set out within the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the public speakers. We have two public speakers who are sharing their allotted time for the objectors. Mr. Ingram on behalf of the cooperative group to speak on the statement, and Ms. Stevenson whose objections will be read to the meeting. Can I now invite Mr. Ingram to make his statement, please?
Good morning, Chair. Can I just check you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Ingram. Please continue.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm speaking this morning on behalf of the cooperative group in objection to the proposed development. The co-op has a food store on New Street within Ledbury Town Centre. Their objection is based on the fact that the proposed development is located outside of the town centre and will result in an unacceptable trade draw from the centre to the detriment of all the businesses within it. The co-op are deeply concerned that should the development go ahead, it will significantly reduce the footfall to Ledbury Town Centre. The issues that high streets and town centres are facing up and down the country are well known. They are fragile environments, and any development which draws trade away from them can have wider, long-lasting impacts on the vitality and viability of these centres. Ledbury is not immune from the risks posed by out-of-centre retail developments. The co-op notes that an almost identical development on the same site was previously refused by members and subsequently dismissed on appeal, with the inspector in that decision finding that a second out-of-town food store would compound the train draw from it and reduce the footfall for linked trips within the town centre. The inspector also cited concerns around the impact the proposal could have on the town's markets and independent stores within the heart of the town centre, concluding that the proposal would have a significantly adverse effect that would not be outweighed by any other benefits of the development. Whilst the food store is marginally smaller, we consider that the impact of it will be the same and will be to the detriment of Ledbury Town Centre in the same way as before. Members will be aware that the local plan and national planning policy framework states that applications should be refused if they are likely to have significant adverse impact on town centre vitality and viability. We do not consider that the proposed development nor the circumstances surrounding it have altered materially since the inspector's previous decision, such that it would justify the approval of another out-of-centre food store, and we do not consider that a different conclusion should be reached on this occasion. We respectfully disagree with your officer's conclusions on this and respect that planning permission be refused based on the applicant's failure to comply with local and national planning policy. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you. And now I'll ask Mr. Evans to read out the statement from Ms. Stevenson.
The sound survey is not thorough, contradicts itself and does not offer suitably acceptable mitigations for the elimination of noise pollution to residents. It's almost dismissive of any impact but cannot be certain that there won't be impact to residents. The design layouts fall short of assuring safe access and reducing traffic congestion, noise and pollution. The proximity of a supermarket to the residents near this site will increase pollution, light pollution and noise pollution to such an extent as to cause annoyance and reduced quality of life for residents. Those who move to Ledbury to be away from overly developed towns and cities. No one has conducted a light pollution survey, even though light pollution has been highlighted as a point of concern for residents. The Lidl does not offer residents of Ledbury anything they do not already have access to. Aldi, pretty much the same, exactly the same shop. Home Bargains, also a discount store, and we already have 3 supermarkets in Ledbury as it is. There are not enough details or plans confirming the medical centre would be effectively staffed and up and running and not left empty. And then that's 3 minutes up.
Thank you. And now I'll move to Mr. Ingram, Mr. Mitchell, the applicant's agent, to speak on behalf of the application. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. My name is Rob Mitchell. I'm the planning agent for the application. I want to firstly thank officers for their report and their presentation. Importantly, the report highlights that there are no outstanding technical planning objections and officers' recommendation is for approval. This is testament to our close work in recent months with your officers and consultation with stakeholders, including the Ledbury Health Partnership and NHS Herefordshire Integrated Care Board. The report is comprehensive, so with the brief time I have, I want to just briefly touch on a few points. Firstly, Ledbury is growing, with housing completions and permissions for over 1,200 new homes since 2011, around 500 of which lie to the north and south of Leaden Way next to this site. The core strategy housing target has been exceeded. However, it has not been matched by the required growth in employment generating development or community facilities. It is crucial new homes are supported by improved local services and facilities. This development will deliver 3 much needed facilities. The site is allocated for development. It specifically encourages medical health services and a day nursery use. And delivery of these uses will support young families and prevent out-commuting for these much-needed local services. The food store is smaller. It reflects the council's retail capacity study of local need, and it will predominantly compete with out-of-centre national operators, which, given local demands, are trading very strongly. The site is the most sequentially preferable site. The store will create up to 40 jobs and Lidl pay industry-leading salaries with no 0 hours contracts. The design is sensitive and it uses sympathetic materials and finishes and retains landscape features, including hedgerows, and it will deliver on and off-site habitat creation and biodiversity gain. The medical centre. Lidl now owns the site and it allows for the transfer of land for the medical centre. This is now secured through the Section 106 legal agreement, together with a substantial payment towards Community Action Ledbury's accessible transport service. Ledbury Health Partnership support the application as detailed in the report. A key indicator of sustainability is a settlement's self-containment, that is the ability to adequately serve its inhabitants. In delivering this development, Ledbury will be far better equipped to serve its residents and visitors and the rural surrounds. The significant majority of local support of this application reflects this. We're proud of the scheme. Our view, and one we invite you to share, is that when taken together, the delivery of these 3 key facilities to Ledbury will be of great benefit to the local community. The merits of this much needed development weigh firmly in favour of the application being granted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If you could now take your place back in the public gallery. Thank you. Right, the local member for this particular ward is Councillor Simmons. The adjoining member is Councillor Harvey. And I'll ask Councillor Simmons to speak first, please. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Although a planning committee member, I am not for the purposes of this application and I do not have a vote. I am simply here to give voice to the opinions and residents of my ward and provide my thoughts on the recommendation as it stands before you. There are positives in what is being proposed and also some very real concerns. I want to be clear from the outset, I have mixed feelings. Lidl's interest in this site has been long-standing and with the previous application dismissed appeal has led to strong opinions as to what is best for our growing town. The case officer has done an excellent job of addressing the representations made and presenting the material planning considerations, and I thank him and the other officers for their work they have done to improve this application since its original submission. So the positives. Firstly, the neighbourhood plan is important. Ledbury residents voted for it and it specifically allocates this land for a nursery and medical centre, alongside a preferred employment or hotel class use. In principle, the community has said it would like to support two of the elements presented in this application. The proposed land for a third-party built-funded medical centre is welcomed by many, not least Ledbury's only GP practice, of whom are attending here in the room today, which has run out of clinical space, has nowhere to run vaccination clinics or provide training placements for staff, never mind in a few years' time when their lease expires. Residents I have spoken to in Platinum Way and Hawke Rise are also excited at the prospect of a children's nursery on their doorstep, with limited childcare options available to them in Ledbury itself. The food store too could bring benefits. With the expansion southwards of the town with developments of Full Pitcher, Hawke Rise and Hopfields, many new residents of the 500 plus houses have no shop locally to walk to for a pint of milk or essentials. A new store is welcomed by many residents here, although some object. It would also bring jobs, around 40, which for a market town like ours is significant. But we cannot gloss over the impact on the town centre. Ledbury thrives on its independent shops, but many traders are struggling. An out-of-town food store will pull
But we haven't got any sound coming through, have we?
Is it, everybody's mic is off, is it?
No, no sound coming through at all. No. The positions are all working. It's just we haven't got any sound coming through. Right, okay.
1, 2, 1, 2. Ah, we are back online. Can I...
Get in there.
Okay, we are now live. Can I apologise for the... well, it wasn't that short a delay. We've got outside contractors working on the IT systems, and they've obviously done something, cut the wrong wire or something. I don't know. Anyway, we'll now resume. Councillor Simmons was speaking at the point at which we had the breakdown, and so she will now resume her presentation. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll restart from the sentence, not the beginning, you'll be pleased to hear. But we cannot gloss over the impact on the town centre. Ledbury thrives on its independent shops, but many traders are struggling. An out-of-town food store will pull some trade away from the town centre, including the co-op, which is already under trading and whose viability is a concern. However, the independent council-commissioned retail assessment from Nexus has considered this and does not view this as a significant impact on the vitality and viability of the town centre. It's up to the committee to decide if you agree. There are also transport and accessibility issues. The existing poor state of the Dimmock Road access point, with a blind summit in close proximity and speeding vehicles, is still a cause for concern. The site is largely car dependent, a fact that doesn't sit comfortably with our commitments to sustainable travel. And there is no shared path access directly from the neighbouring Hawk Rise residential area. However, in response to the consultee comments, officers have worked for improvements to other pedestrian and cycling links, including a new crossing of the Leaden Way, bus stops, and a substantial Section 106 contribution of £100,000 for community transport in the form of an electric minibus to assist with access to the site. Residents have raised concerns about noise impacts from the operation of the store, particularly late night or early morning deliveries. The officer report suggests a condition can be applied, but I cannot see this in the conditions presented to the committee. I would ask the committee to clarify this with the officer. I also worry about landscape and ecology. Ledbury is the gateway to the Malvern Hills National Landscape. The importance of the established hedgerow with semi-mature trees and greenery on the Leaden Way and along the Hawk Rise boundary should not be underestimated, nor should dark skies in the evening be negatively impacted by exterior illumination of the store. The officers have recommended a lighting condition and a hedgerow management plan condition, although little refer in the plan being approved today to remove sections and laying and cutting this hedge to a uniform height of 1.5 metres, which will initially have the effect of removing screening capability, particularly to the nursery play area, and loss of the naturalistic form. The condition on management is also limited to 10 years. I respectfully suggest the landscape and hedgerow management timeframe should be extended, given the reliance on this for biodiversity net gain credits. Finally and crucially, while land for the health centre is offered as part of the scheme, there is no guarantee who will occupy any building or even whether it can be delivered within the 3-year timeframe for the application to come forward. It would not be an additional GP surgery, as many think, but it could be a potential relocation site for the existing Ledbury Health Partnership practice, which is very much needed. With the NHS reorganising and the current merger of the Integrated Care Board, the risk is that priorities change, funding shifts, and we are left with only the supermarket with the health centre never materialising. That's a very real concern that I have tried to explain to residents. Given all these considerations, and on balance and with some reluctance, I do concur with the case officer's recommendation. My support comes due to the conditions and Section 106 obligations negotiated. They try to secure the medical centre land, ensure landscape and ecological protection and enhancement, avoid noise impacts on nearby residents, prevent surface water flooding issues, and deliver connections with the town centre through improved community transport, bus infrastructure, walking and cycling connections. I would add that if you as a committee decide after the debate there are grounds to refuse the application and a subsequent appeal were successful, there is a chance we will lose the ability to attach some of these conditions. This is not a wholehearted endorsement, but a pragmatic recognition of the views of many residents, the evidence base, and planning policy position. If members share my opinion, please voice the importance of ensuring conditions are robust, that Lidl continue to work to support community aspirations, and that third parties, such as ICB, act decisively to support residents of Ledbury and the surrounding area. I look forward to listening to the debate.
Thank you. And now I call on the adjoining ward member, Councillor Harvey, to speak. She does not have a vote in this debate, but she can speak up for up to 10 minutes limit. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the committee members who were able to attend yesterday's site visit and for the interest and informed questions that you asked during that visit. I hope you all took the opportunity while you were visiting to drive through Ledbury Town Centre and take in our exceptionally attractive and vibrant retail core. This application is not in my ward, and I have left my colleague and ward member for the development, Councillor Simmons, to cover the issues specific to the site itself. As the ward member for the town centre, I'll confine my comments to the impact this application would undoubtedly have on the vitality and viability of the retail core of the town. As you are aware, Ledbury is rightly recognised as the jewel in Herefordshire's crown as regards its overwhelmingly independent-led town centre, famously being listed a few years ago as one of Europe's top 10 Christmas shopping destinations in The Guardian. These businesses are predominantly family and sole trader operated enterprises, and I'm sure you're all aware what a stressful and all-consuming job it is to front up the operation of such businesses, as well as outside trading hours, doing all the things that need doing to keep them running. Many of these business owners would have liked to have been present in the public gallery here today to demonstrate the level of concern that they have individually but also collectively regarding the existential threat this development poses to the health of our high street. But that would have meant them shutting their shops for the day, and these businesses already operate on a knife edge financially and energetically. So it's down to me to be their spokesman and advocate. I hope I can do them justice. I really hope that you've all had the opportunity and the headspace to take in the points made in the late submissions received from the Chairman of Ledbury Traders Association and from representatives acting for Aldi. Please don't let their lateness count against them. The traders have been hanging on, waiting for the Aldi submission, which was flagged to the case officer earlier in the summer. Both submissions are extremely cogent in the points they respectively make. It also gives me confidence that the points they make echo concerns that I have been flagging to officers for months regarding the way in which the assessment of the retail impact of this application has been being finessed over the course of the application's consideration. The last time Lidl had a go at getting this application over the line, it was dismissed at appeal when the inspector, quite rightly, saw through the ways in which the retail impact of the proposals had been presented in ways that sought to minimise visibility of the full effect on Ledbury's retail core. Sadly, this is happening again here. Our officers tell us that the approach taken manages to keep within the lines of what is considered a valid method. However, that doesn't mean we can't recognise and pick apart the many ways in which the presentation of the data paints a particularly advantageous picture for the applicant. Back in October last year, the original retail impact assessment submitted by Lidl stated it anticipated turning over £9,293 per metre square of convenience product in the 880 metre squared trading area for these commodities. This was slightly lower than the trading turnover used way back in 2016, 9 years ago, for the Aldi supermarket application in Ledbury, which was then £9,808 per square metre. If I can refer you to Table 6B of the latest revision of the cumulative assessment of the application, projected forward to 2029, which was submitted to the applicant's evidence base on the 9th of June this year, I feel sure members will be able to conjure this document up on your laptops. As you can see, by June 2025, Lidl are being allowed to model their retail impact on the town centre using a convenience turnover of only £6,902 per metre squared, a whopping reduction of 26% over their own October figures. Referring now to Table 8B in the same cumulative assessment update, you can see in the far right-hand column that the impact on the town centre convenience retailers is expected to be variously between 8.4% and 8.9% of their turnover, with Co-op projected to lose 11.6% of its turnover. As you've heard separately from the Co-op supermarkets representative here this morning, similar effects in previous planning applications have been sufficient to be classed as representing significant harm in planning policy terms. They should qualify for similar classification in this application too. However, by weaving in a much higher assumed turnover of comparison goods retailers in the town centre, the overall impact figure is seen to reduce to 4.3% on average across all retailers in the town centre. Still painful, but on average not sufficient, our officers tell us, to class as significant harm. But remember, colleagues, this is an average figure. These impacts are not felt by individual businesses as an average. It's those higher figures that are the reality for the businesses concerned. And you've read how the Traders Association points out how many businesses aren't being named and recognised in the study and the extent to which their existing business is being underrepresented. We all know that the health of our high streets depends on the collective sum of our businesses. They generate footfall for one another, present an attractive destination together, and stand or fall together. There is a slightly smaller trading area proposed for this development than the one rejected at appeal last time. However, the impact of this application will still deliver significant harm to individual businesses in the town centre. Aldi says it, Co-op says it, the collective voices of my independent town traders say it, and the disaggregated figures before you also say it. The Aldi development in 2016 was judged to cause significant harm to the town centre, and this was mitigated with significant financial contribution to the enhancement of the town centre public realm to further encourage visitors and shoppers, and which has enhanced the ability to hold town centre markets and community events. No such mitigation is being proposed in the present draft of the heads of terms for this application. It is simply not acceptable for the argument to be made that because Ledbury's High Street is not yet damaged, that it's fine to proceed with a development that is highly likely to damage it. Previously, this council's planners have been keen to defend this principle when Tesco's, Sainsbury's and previously Lidl made dangerously damaging proposals. This committee is now the last bastion of defence for my town's beating retail heart. Much of the local support for this hybrid application rests on the unrest that has been generated nationally and locally by concern that post-COVID, local GP services are not sufficient to meet local need. Local people are relatively indifferent to the proposed supermarket itself, but all assume that the blandishment tactic of the applicant of making land provision in principle for a healthcare facility will result in additional GP provision to that which the town already has. This will not be the case if it comes forward at all, and that is a big if, because the ICB has no funds in its capital programme to deliver it and no plans to provide them. It will have to depend on some sort of private finance initiative to pay for it, and we all know how successful PFIs have been for the public purse. And that will then see the town's existing accessible and sustainably located GP practice move out of the town centre, which will have most people visiting the out-of-town facility having to drive there and then popping into Lidl for anything they need before driving back home. I'm sympathetic to the difficulties of the GP practice and that they find themselves in, and I can see that this offer might look like a solution to their private business problems, but it is not the right solution for the community they serve, nor for the public purse which wholly funds their operation. This goes against the national initiative to deliver community-centred services and for these to be sustainably located. But in addition, and importantly, it would deliver a double whammy to the town centre footfall, as all the existing linked trips to shops in town made by people popping in to the health facilities in the town centre would be lost at a stroke. The Council's updated retail needs impact assessment looks out to 2041, and within that timescale there is an agreed scope for additional provision. Ledbury has experienced a lot of unplanned development in recent years, but only a fraction of the approved homes have so far been built. For now, there is scope within the capacity of our existing supermarkets and town centre traders to serve the needs of our current and expected future households, while we wait for a supermarket provider to come forward with a sustainable and sympathetic proposal for a new provision which works with the current retail and economic ecology of the town, rather than against it. Members, I stand with our current businesses, large and small.
Councillor Howard, you've gone over your 10 minutes. You could wind up, please.
I've got a sentence.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I stand with our current businesses, large and small, in asking you to reject this application on the ground that the development would have a significant adverse impact on the viability and vitality of Ledbury Town Centre and therefore is contrary to policies SS1, LB1, E5 and E6 of the Herefordshire Core Strategy, Policy EE 3.1 of Ledbury Neighbourhood Development Plan and paragraphs 85 to 90 of the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I invite debate. Can I have speaker? Baker, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all thank our planning officer, Ollie Jones, for his very comprehensive report and his illuminating speech or words yesterday at the site visit. I found that very useful, not knowing the area very well. I also like to thank our public speakers and our two members who always speak from the heart. Whether we agree with them is neither here nor there, but we accept what they have to say. As a long-standing member of planning committees here and elsewhere, I find large applications such as this is often difficult to come up with a popular decision. There's so much information there to digest, and given 3 minutes to comment on, I think it's 56 pages of report is virtually impossible. There appears to be a great deal of support from local residents who don't have any local shops nearby, where we had a look at the site, didn't we, from that high point by those new houses. They will then have an easy walk into the supermarket, doctor's surgery and nursery, which will certainly be popular by local young families. We've heard of a lot of objections from town centre shopkeepers because of unfair competition. But we run a market economy in this country, and we must support businesses, no matter where they are. And of course, this will will increase local employment and big improvements to local infrastructure, which we're often criticised for not allowing. We've got a care home opposite the site, and so that will be certainly, this development will certainly be helpful for them. But of course, we've then heard about light pollution, noise pollution, those hedgerows. Now, I was really quite impressed with those hedgerows that surround the site. They were encroaching a little bit on the footpath, but a little bit of tidying up would work. Layering them, which is something we see around farmland, I don't think would work there, and it would reduce the height and would increase the light pollution locally. So I think we need to keep these hedgerows as they are. I can't think of any planning reasons why we should refuse this application, and so it's maybe with somewhat of a heavy heart that I recommend that we approve the application as per the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Baker, is that a proposer?
It is.
No, right. Is there a seconder anywhere? Councillor Davis. Can we just noise condition? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know that Councillor Simmons raised the point with respect to noise management. We had drafted a planning condition. Unfortunately, I don't know how that happened, but it did slip off the list of attached conditions. So if members are happy with the additional condition, which I'll read out now, then maybe that can form part of the motion. But the condition that has been recommended is prior to commencement of the development, a comprehensive noise management scheme shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The scheme shall be based on the findings and recommendations of the submitted noise assessment report, and then references that report, and shall include, in terms of the nursery acoustic design compliance, evidence demonstrating that all teaching spaces within the nursery element will be designed and constructed to meet the performance standards set out in the current version of Building Bulletin 93, Acoustic Design of Schools, Performance Standards, including internal ambient noise levels, sound insulation and reverberation time. It shall also include a delivery noise management plan for the food store. The delivery noise management plan for the food store shall detail proposed delivery times and hours, measures to minimise noise from delivery operations, including use of reversing alarms, unloading procedures and vehicle idling, and then any mitigation measures proposed to ensure delivery-related noise remains with acceptable limits at nearby receptors. And then the development shall therefore be carried out and operated in accordance with the approved noise management scheme. And the reason for that condition is to ensure an appropriate acoustic environment for future users of the nursery, to safeguard the amenity of nearby residential occupiers, and to ensure that noise impacts from deliveries and plan remain within acceptable limits in accordance with policy SD1 of the Herefordshire Local Plan Core Strategy, the Ledbury Neighbourhood Development Plan, and the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So is that agreed?
Is that agreed?
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Councillor Thomas.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much to our officer. That was a very good trip yesterday, if you could call that. Several things we need. They've reduced the size of this store. If you think, ladies and gentlemen, this room is 240 square metres approximately. I haven't actually measured it, but you are looking at a store 4.5 times the size of this room. That's quite a large supermarket. Quite big, I would think bigger than maybe Tesco's, and certainly bigger than the Co-op. One or two things that concerned me yesterday was the route from Hawk Rise, I think you call it. There is no agreed rise. They would have to go out onto Leaden Way and then back in again. That's a concern. I also concerned about that our officer told us about drainage. Well, there's no attenuation pond in the whole of that site. That they supposedly the drainage is going to go into an underground tanks and a thing, and then soak away. Well, where can it soak away? It's all car park. you can't have a soakaway under a car park because quite quickly it'll sink. I think competition, I'm not sure how it'll affect the town. I've worked quite a bit in Ledbury and it is very vibrant, I will agree, and I agree it is a jewel of Herefordshire, lovely shops. I think that probably this store will give more competition to Tesco's, Co-op and Aldi. And at the moment, I'm still not convinced that it is necessary. So at the moment, I'm not going to declare my position to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodhall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we experienced on our visit yesterday the area, the noise from large HGVs powering down those roads and quite fast traffic all converging on that roundabout. It's a noisy place. Didn't help the fact that we had somebody obviously trimming hedges or whatever it was in the industrial estate. We can see the industrial estate buildings around there. They're not attractive. So they're old-fashioned ones. This one, this Lidl's building, the design, it seems, you know, they've tried to put it the green walls, the red brick, making it fit in a lot better. And we saw that within walking distance, easy walking distance, are these new developments. These houses, was it 500 houses or so, that don't have any facilities nearby. When it comes to the health centre, this is obviously a big carrot, and any carrot is probably a good thing in this economy at the moment. But the Ledbury Health Partnership have written in and fully support it. They have some funding from the ICB, and they've got 3 years to get their act together. I think actually there's a 5-year, isn't there? There's a 5-year extended time when they can have the land built out. But I'm sure that they will pull out all the plugs to get this to happen, because we have a similar problem in Leominster, where we have a health centre which is over capacity. So it's not so much that they need to have another health centre, they need a bigger one, and we're getting one. And this is encouraging the doctors and the staff to stay with the health centre, because they are now given a future, which doesn't mean being cramped into a place where they can't manage the footfall that they have to endure. One of the things, and at least there's a realistic provision, a realistic likelihood of a health centre of some kind being installed there, which is gives great hope, I'm sure, to many people. There was also, I mean, there's an issue in my mind that maybe the planning officer, maybe Mr. Jones can help us with later, is that in this plan, on the land area, it looks like approximately, I'm estimating 25% of the land area is put aside for this health centre, including parking area, hard paving and all that. I wanted to know, just to check, is that included in the drainage capacity calculations for the retention tanks, for the overflow, or are the drainage calculations only being done for the Lidl's car park and nursery area? All right, so is it the entire, are they providing future provision in the drainage so that if and when we hope that this health surgery or health centre gets built, it will be able to just plumb itself in to the existing system rather than having to reconfigure an old system? So that's just something that I don't think was mentioned anywhere, and I just wanted to check, okay? And then finally, to address the footfall issue with the town centre, obviously this affects a lot of market towns, and we're all scared stiff of losing our shops. It's the worst thing when you're walking down the high street and you see these empty shops and they haven't been taken up for a long time, and it breaks your heart when you see that. But it really is down to the big supermarkets that have done this. And in a way, it's down to the local populace who decide to go and visit the Tesco's and the Co-ops and the Aldis and the Morrisons. They make that choice. The shopper makes the choice.
3 minutes.
Thank you. So I don't think, it's not really up to Lidl's to control that, and I think they're trying to do as much as they can. So I would support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Gennard. Yeah, sorry, we might deal with the question first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In direct response to Councillor Willer's point with respect to the drainage strategy, as you will have seen within the report and in terms of the comments from the land drainage team, the lead local flood authority, they've commented on the submission that has been presented by the applicant, which in terms of their drainage strategy does take account of the site as a whole. So they're talking for the proposed medical centre, the attenuation tank would need to have a minimum required volume. So it has taken account of that. Clearly, because the outline, the medical centre is being made an outline, the precise details of that aren't known at this stage. But you'll, to refer to the officer report, there is a pre-commencement condition which requires that detailed strategy to come forward prior to commencement of any of the development to cover the whole site. So that will have to be factored in. Clearly, it's a matter of timing in terms of knowing what exactly that medical centre will look like. But that is captured within the submission and has been reviewed by the lead local flood authority. So yeah, it has taken account of that element.
Councillor Gennard.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the officer for his report and for everyone in the room that's spoken so far. It does feel like there's a leaning towards approval from the current sitting councillors here. I do have some concerns. I am glad that there's a comprehensive noise condition going in. With regards to the hedgerow, there's plans or pictures within the report of Gloucester, Shrewsbury, Newtown, Lidl's. They look very, very open. There's sort of grass with trees. So quite concerned about the hedgerows, really, that they're going to be cut down to 1.5 metres. I just wonder if this could be addressed. It would be a distinct loss of biodiversity space. And I think there's only a 10-year hedgerow management plan. And I wonder if this could be extended just to retain that biodiversity around the site.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, in terms of the landscaping that has been submitted for the full elements, so for the food store and the nursery, clearly details, full details of that have been provided. And yes, it does show a laying of that hedge down to 1.5 metres along Leaden Way in terms of the boundary there. That has been reviewed by the council's landscape officer, and they haven't made an objection to that. Clearly within the report there are detailed conditions with respect to complying with that, and then thereafter the 10-year ongoing management plan for that. I mean, if members wish, we can look at amending the condition to allow for a different form of boundary treatment and management of a specific boundary. And similarly, we can look at extending the management plan beyond 10 years if members consider that to be appropriate and can give reason for that. But I think we need to know exactly in terms of what boundary the concern is, if it's limited to that one along Leaden Way, and what members would be expecting to see there.
Could that be done in consultation with the local member? Yeah, or members. Is that agreed by the proposer and seconder? Yes, that's agreed. Yes. Do anything further? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. One can only feel sorry for Ledbury in the amount of development it had to endure in the last few years. And I gather there's even more threatened, I think is the right word for it. But I would say that there are actually I speak as a woman who does the shopping. There are two kinds of shopping. One is the basics food shopping, which you go to a supermarket for. But the other is what is known, I believe, as comparison shopping. It's when you want to, say, buy a wedding present or a christening present or something of that nature, a birthday present. You wouldn't go to a supermarket. You would go to one of the many delightful stores in Ledbury High Street, which has a lot of specialist stores that do lots of little things like that. So I don't think that Lidl or any of the other supermarkets would threaten that in any way whatsoever. I know from a very brief encounter, Councillor Carward-Iden, I got to the waiting site, the meeting site early, and there were two elderly ladies there, great dog walking. Both of them strongly supported Lidl. They thought it was a great idea, and I feel that the people who live in Hawke Rise, that development doesn't really seem to bear much relation to Ledbury, does it? But it's there. I'm sure that they would appreciate it. So I will support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Chairman. I would be more enthusiastic about this proposal if it involved moving the insanely placed facility now being built at Belmont, approved in that case against very strong local objections. I could have done without the corporate propaganda, thank you. I also know that whenever a new supermarket opens, they always say we're creating 40 new jobs, not mentioning the 40 jobs that are lost elsewhere by that happening. But I hear what Councillor Simmons and others have said. It is that Ledbury is developing at a breakneck step. The health centre, because we can disagree because it's so vague, it could be almost anything, including the Herefordshire branch office of the English Digitas branch that will soon be opening. But the supermarket itself and the nursery, I think, add up to something that will be important by what seems to be becoming a centre of population. And I think that perhaps Lidl is not going to take the same money that would go elsewhere. It is a limited store. There's a lot of things it doesn't do. As you see when you go in there, it is not going to be a competitor to Tesco in that way. And I think if Ledbury doesn't do it now, in the way it's going to have a much greater shopping centre outside it, which would damage their wonderful shopping centre that they have. But I think in this way, and with great regret, I think this has to happen, and I hope that the centre of Ledbury can wear it, and I believe that it will.
Very good. Have we any other speakers? Is there none? I just want to say one thing. Shopping is a promiscuous occupation, and people tend to go from one to another, and next week it's somewhere else they go. And I do think with all the, sadly, and for many, the growth that is going to take place in Ledbury, I think the High Street will more than adequately cope with the increased shopping space for this type of goods. And the majority of, I think, shops won't. It's the co-ops and the Tesco's of these worlds that will suffer. I have to declare an interest. I'm a member of the co-op, but it is a rather expensive store to shop in, especially if you're on low income. Anyway, right. If there are no other speakers, can I go back to officers if they wish to say anything further?
Yeah, nothing to add, thank you.
Then I'll go to the local members. I'll go to the adjoining member first, and then leave the local member to sum up finally. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for your comments, but perhaps not all of them. The housing developments that you've seen around the site for this application were unplanned and are a consequence of Ledbury having been targeted by predatory planning applications for the duration of the time that Herefordshire was without a 5-year housing land supply, as we are now, as a consequence of adopting a local plan that was over-ambitious in terms of the amount of housing that could be delivered. That has been damaging, and I think you saw that when you visited. That is not a reason to compound that damage by supporting this development now, particularly when it will, you know, the way that the figures have been handled masks the true nature of the damage that is going to come to the town centre as a consequence of it. Lidl and Aldi massively overtrade on the floor space that they have compared to even the figures used in the modelling here. And you can see that in terms of the amount of overtrading that is the reality of Aldi's operation in the town today. And the town centre has already had to bite down on that and weather it, weakened in the process. What I would say is that if members are not minded to support a recommendation to refuse this application, please at least acknowledge that, unlike with the Aldi application, there is no mitigation of the impact that this development will undoubtedly have on the town centre in the heads of terms as it's currently drafted. And I would be very grateful if Councillor Baker would consider withdrawing temporarily his proposal for approval of this in order to test whether there is support for a deferral of a decision on this in an effort to go back and try and negotiate some mitigation measures for the town centre if the committee is minded more likely to approve in the long term. Thank you.
I think we've got to deal with the proposal which has been proposed and seconded. Bearing in mind we, at this late stage, having moved from to this particular point, so I don't think we can legally sort of change the minds. If that's your mind, you must vote against the procedure, the proposal. Anyway, I'll now move to Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, and my fellow ward member for their really considered and detailed thoughts and questions. I think the debate has led to some clarification of some key points, and I'm really pleased to see that the conditions regarding noise and the changes to potential landscape in terms of the hedgerow and how that is managed can be addressed post this committee. So I'd like to just say again, I am cognizant of the potential risk of out-of-town stores. I have heard everything Councillor Harvey has said, but down to what we have in front of us in terms of the evidence, I feel that the decision is the right decision. So thank you for coming to this point, and yes, we'll move forward with the vote. Thank you.
Right, I'll now come to the vote. Can I ask for those in favour of the particular proposal as set out? 11. Those against? Oh, that is unanimous. Okay. Carried. Can we now have a 10-minute break while we finally go into the final item? Thank you. Thank you. We are now back. Welcome back to the meeting of the Planning Committee. We'll move on to item number 8, the third application, land at north of Ashburton Village Hall, Ashburton, Herefordshire. Application for approval of reserved matters following outline planning, proposed residential development of 10 dwellings, amendments to the original application for the approval of appearance, landscaping and scale. Can I now move to the officer's presentation, please? Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon again, members. Thanks again for those who visited the site yesterday morning. So as the Chair has referenced, the application is 191013, which seeks approval for of the reserved matters of scale, appearance and landscaping following Outline Planning Permission 152041. That's for the residential development of 10 dwellings, and the site is at land to the north of Ashburton Village Hall, Ashburton. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the application site identified by the red star. So yeah, located to the north of the village hall and to the east of the A417 main road linking Leominster with Gloucester. Next slide, please. So the application site outlined in red with all other land in the control of the applicant outlined in blue. The site is a parcel of undulating agricultural land on the northern edge of Ashburton, adjacent to the A417 and the village hall. Lies within the catchment of the River Lug, which forms part of the River Wye SAC. Outline planning permission was granted in 2016 that established the principal development along with the access and layout. This application now seeks approval of the remaining reserved matters as stated. Next slide, please. So some photographs. The first looks south along the A417 with the site to the east of that, so to the left in the background. And again, you can make out that undulating topography that the members will have noted yesterday on site. Next photo, please. So again, this kind of looks from where we were standing yesterday, looking northeast, close to the public right-of-way, which runs along that southern boundary and heads kind of northeast, but remains out with the application site. Next slide, please. So this one looks again from where we were standing yesterday, looks north and shows kind of the main part of the site. Again, picking up on the undulating topography there and kind of noting that shallow element and valley type landform which runs through the sort of middle part of the site. Again, you can see the A417 in the background with the sort of ribbon development that straddles its eastern side. Next slide, please. So the site layout, this has already been approved at the outline stage. You'll note the kind of topographic levels are indicated on the plan, and the development at that stage, at the outline stage, was designed in terms of the layout to focus itself on the lower parts of the site, and seeking to avoid development being placed upon those higher parts to the south and then to the north respectively. Next slide, please. And then this is the submitted landscaping details, so woodland buffer to the northern part of the site and planting to the west, allowing for sort of more filtered views into the site once that becomes established. Just important point to clarify from a procedural perspective, landscaping is a reserved matter, but the Outline Planning Permission did approve specific landscaping plans under condition 4. Those are referenced within the report and there is commentary on that specific element. But these landscaping details that are submitted to satisfy the legislation and to seek approval of them formally must accord with those already approved at the outline stage. This reserve matters application does not seek to change the strategy, but rather confirms compliance with it. There are also a number of landscape-related conditions attached to the outline planning permission as well. So the next slide, I think we will just run through the dwellings. So if we could kind of just run through those, there's quite a few of those, but the dwellings are 2-storey. The mass and height of the buildings are considered to be modest, with ridge heights around 7 metres and eaves height around 5 metres. The layout places the dwellings, as I said, on the lower parts of the site. That's already been agreed by the layout. The design themselves, in terms of scale and appearance, adopts a contemporary vernacular approach, so combining Herefordshire, red sandstone, natural and black stain timber cladding, slate and clay tile roofs. They'd have a rectilinear form, with pitch roofs, and relatively consistent architectural language. The materials are considered to reflect local character, while introducing visual interest and variation through a notably contemporary design. The carports as well, if perhaps we could go back, sorry, just to highlight the carports. There we are. So the carports and ancillary structures are designed on balance to be subordinate and ancillary to the main dwelling. So there is a detached double carport and a single carport. So 3 of the dwellings would benefit from carport provision. But again, that in terms of its positioning has been agreed by the layout. We're considering the scale and appearance of those at this stage. Note the concerns regarding site levels and potential visual impact of the dwellings. Again, the layout of the development was approved at the outline stage, situated on the lower parts of the site, avoiding the absolute highest parts adjacent to the village hall and further to the north. The scale of the dwellings themselves, all 2-storey, are considered relatively modest and appropriate to the site's context. Condition 7 of the outline planning permission does require details of earthworks and excavations to be submitted prior to commencement, but we need to be mindful that the scope of further level details at this reserve matter stage is limited by the fact that we've already agreed the layout. So potentially different details would then interact with matters already agreed. In terms of nutrient neutrality, again, this is a reserve matters application, but we are bound by the habitat regulations to screen the application, as that was not done in 2016. The site lies within the River Lug catchment, and therefore a habitat regulation assessment has been undertaken. The in-principle strategy that has been advanced as part of the habitat regs would be in the form of foul water being treated by a package treatment plant with a discharge to a watercourse, and nutrient neutrality would be secured through the purchase of phosphate credits from the council's integrated constructed wetland at Tarrington. Legal agreement would secure the purchase of the requisite quantum of credits, and within the agreement there would be a restriction of occupation until June 2026. So just some other matters. There are several technical matters that are managed and captured through conditions that are pursuant to the outline planning permission, including but not limited to condition 5, which requires details of foul and surface water drainage to be provided prior to occupation. So clearly we've had to consider what the principles of the strategy would be to demonstrate nutrient neutrality, but the details of that are managed through condition 5. There are other conditions 14 and 15 relating to ecology and biodiversity, as well as other landscape landscape management and maintenance conditions. Similarly, there are other conditions as well covering materials, roof details, etc. So this application doesn't seek to open those and consider those. They would remain to be discharged separately as well. So in conclusion, the scale and the appearance of the dwellings are considered appropriate and proportionate, and the landscaping is consistent with what has already been considered and approved at the outline stage. Nutrient neutrality would be secured through a legal agreement to secure the requisite credits. The application is considered to accord with the relevant development plan policies, and the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions and the completion of the Section 106 agreement to secure the purchase of the credits as set out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now I'll move on to public speakers. Can I invite Mr. Hammond on behalf of Ashburton Parish Council to speak in objection to the application. You have 3 minutes.
I'm a retired planning inspector and have determined over 700 appeals and cost applications and made recommendations to the Secretary of State on recovered appeals and other matters. It is vital that you appreciate exactly what you're being asked to approve. There is clear case law establishing that an application should be read on its face, that is, precisely as worded. You may be warned that a refusal would result in the applicant winning at appeal and being awarded costs. I am well placed to categorically state that is unfounded. Planning inspectors are advised that if a reserved matters application is inconsistent with the terms of the outline permission, as this is, then consideration should be given to dismissing the appeal. The application is described as being for the reserved matters of landscape appearance and scale. However, its confused presentation also seeks approval of other matters. Approving the submitted application would result in approval of suites of conflicting plans, many in direct conflict with the approved layout. The reserved matters application is inconsistent with the outline permission. For example, the outline permission approved a site plan revision B. This application seeks approval of an amended plan, which appears similar, but the application form itself describes material changes to the approved plan, including the attenuation pond relocated adjacent to housing, carport added to plot 8, landscape scheme amended to accommodate the above. The revision also shows 2-storey carports with habitable accommodation capable of independent occupation. These are substantial material changes. Easily missed is the small print attenuation pond in the area above and adjacent to the A417 in place of proposed tree planting in the to the north of the axis. 2 further proposed site plans showing different changes are also submitted for approval. In similar vein, a landscape materials plan and planting plan were approved at outline with conditions requiring strict accordance with those plans. However, this application resubmits those and further landscape drawings, including a different planting plan and a different materials plan to accommodate the changed pond location. A reserved matters application cannot make changes to the terms of an outline approval. The application also submits for approval many other matters, including a drainage scheme, which internal consultees have made clear cannot be approved at this stage, noting that the scheme is incomplete and ambiguous. On scale, the Council's own requirements state that a bar scale must be included on all plans to enable them to be scaled on screen. Scale cannot be properly assessed, nor can a precise condition limiting height be imposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am speaking on behalf of residents of Ashburton who submitted objections to this application. There were no comments in support. The National Planning Policy Framework aims to deliver developments that are visually attractive through good architecture, layout, and appropriate and effective landscaping. Those broadly expressed criteria are brought into sharp relief in this case when considering the reserve matters of scale, landscaping, and appearance. As you may have seen from your site visit yesterday, Ashburton is a dispersed settlement which has evolved gradually through the addition of single dwellings or small developments arranged in an irregular pattern, none dominating any other. We believe the officer's report gives insufficient weight to the differences between that established character and the proposed dwellings. On the matters of scale and landscaping, there are no details in the plans on the ridge heights, but they do show the finished floor levels for the houses. These suggest that conservatively, the ridge heights will be around 97 to 98 metres above sea level. At the entrance to the site, the A417 sits 86 metres, some 12 metres below. The topography of the site will thus naturally draw the eye up and across to these structures, and give emphasis to their visual intrusion. Some planting may offer mitigation, but as noted by the Council's own landscape officer, the plans before you now suggest a sparser and more limited intention than previously submitted, not least to accommodate the relocated attenuation pond. Turning to appearance, the properties are drawn to a uniform and unimaginative design and built from palliative materials that are not present in the village. They are unashamedly urban in appearance and entirely at variance with their setting. In no sense do they blend with or complement the local vernacular. Rather, they introduce a dominating and incongruous element that is only given emphasis through its prominence on rising ground. Other recently built houses in Ashburton were welcomed for their contribution to the appearance of the village. As presented, these dwellings neither enhance the existing built environment or offer any compensating architectural added value. If you're not already persuaded to refuse after Mr. Hammond's exposition of the inconsistencies in the application, then I would urge you to reject it on the grounds that the proposals present a development that in scale, landscaping and appearance is inappropriate for the site and which fails to meet the aims of the NPPF. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll invite Mr. Davis, the applicant, to speak. Thank you, Mr. Davis. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor.
Turn on your microphone.
If you could turn on your microphone, please.
Or turn to the one next to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors, for your time and consideration of this matter here today. I think it's fair to say that this application has endured a fairly protracted process, but nonetheless, as someone and as part of a family with strong links to the local area, we do consider that we've brought forward a high quality and well-designed scheme. I would also add that it is a site that is earmarked for development in Ashburton's NDP, and therefore it is anticipated that it will contribute towards the growth of the village during the current plan period. I think it's fair to say that pretty much every residential scheme always invites differing opinions on design and appearance, but we have commissioned some excellent architects and designers to help put this scheme together. And I would like to highlight the case officer's report, which talks about the design, scale and appearance of the scheme, combining traditional and local vernacular along with contemporary elements in a refined manner, using high quality materials typically used in the locality with material interest and variation to ensure that it will be a positive addition to the village. And I sincerely hope that the committee sees it in the same light. Finally, I'd just like to add my thanks to the case officer for his energy and time in processing and assessing the application. His report is excellent and comprehensive, and I commend this application to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll move on to the local member who will open the debate. The local member, sorry. Oh, if you could just return to the public gallery. Right, the local member is Councillor Lester, who is the ward member for this application. He speaks first and then has the right to speak at the end of the debate. He has a limit of 10 minutes. He does not have a vote. Thank you. Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to those members who were able to attend the site visit yesterday, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me that Ashburton is a beautiful village and it's a wonderful place to be. Thank you to Mr. Jones as well for the comprehensive report before us. And as Mr. Harvey says, it has been a long process, the outline being approved in 2016. So this has been on quite a journey. So on the face of it, the application is very positive because it's providing housing for Ashburton, and it's not a very large settlement proposal. It's 10 houses, which seems to be, when you look at Ashburton as a whole, a proportionate level of housing to introduce into Ashburton in an area that is designated for housing development. So that's not in dispute, and it's really nice that a local person has put forward some opportunities here in the form of housing land to develop housing for people that will keep the village sustainable in all the ways that you all know. So that is not in dispute, and it's welcome. But I have to say I was surprised about the level of objections to the proposal. That's, the 26 objections that was neatly summarised by Mr. Gardner, and of course the parish council has their own concerns as well. And I would like to thank the parish council for really giving this matter their full attention so that they can really make sure that what's being proposed, everybody's clear about that. And I have to say, having looked at the papers, the different permissions, and the report, and listened to the parish council, I still think there's a level of uncertainty, and I think I would ask this planning committee to get certainty on these particular matters so they're absolutely clear. And the two questions we have about the first point that was raised, and if I can draw your attention to page 214 of the committee report, it's where the parish council are highlighting the issues about the compatibility of the two proposals, well, the one outline permission that was granted in 2016 and the proposals before you. And so I'm trying to distill in my own mind how you should approach it. And I've come up with, there's two fundamental questions to address Mr. Hammond's point, is this proposal consistent with the outline permission in the ways that it must be? And secondly, are there other elements to this application that were being introduced in this reserved matters application that really belong or should have belonged on the outline permission? Now, I'm not going to tell you yes, no, whatever, but I would like you to be assured of those two questions when you're making your final deliberations. We've heard also about the appearance of the proposals. So the proposed dwellings, so that's on page 216, and that the objections are that the proposal in design is not really consistent with Ashburton, and that the cladding doesn't really add something that's in keeping with the rest of the village. So the challenge is this introducing a foreign element to the vernacular of the village, and that's got to be seen in the round about the fact that there are different styles of house, from brand new to listed thatched buildings. So there's something for the committee to chew on there in light of the reactions and the objections of the people who've put forward their ideas. This issue about scale, I think, is absolutely fundamental, and Mr. Gardner's talking about the levels and the 12-metre difference. And I mean, for those of you who were at the site visit yesterday, I articulated the point that a dwelling may be 7 metres tall. That's fine. That's standard. Between 6.5 to 7 metres tall is a standard two-storey house of a medium size. However, where that sits in the landscape determines how high it is, not how high it is from doorstep to ridge height. It's where it sits. So the officer, Mr. Jones, has addressed that on page 223 in 7.17. But the point that it's a modest two-storey scale is correct, so long as it's set at the right level. So I'd like to draw your attention to that. With regard to conditions, the parish council quite reasonably said if the application is going to be approved, that there should be conditions on there, and the request is that there are conditions about the ridge height, and also with regards to dormer windows, extra features of planning that may alter the housing and have more of an impact on the development, and also with regard to the carports, making sure that they don't turn into uses that were never envisaged for this type of development. So I would ask you to bear all of those things in mind and in your deliberations, and seek the assurance that you've got that what you're actually voting for is going to be compatible with what's already been established, and whether you're happy that the siting of it, scale of it, is going to be proportionate and appropriate for that setting that most of you were able to see. But even from the photographs, you can see the issues that are there. So I'll hold fire for now and listen to the debate with interest, but I've set you some challenges there, and I know you're up to the task, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hester. And now I open the debate. Can I have speakers? Right, sorry.
Thank you, Joe. I would like to address a couple of points which Councillor Lester has just brought up, and had he not, I would have been addressing them anyway. And that is that those items mentioned by Mr. Hammond, I think the name is, in regards to possible inconsistencies and maybe diversions from correct procedure. May we have some direction from the officers, please, how we are to consider this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to set some context, clearly this application has been with us for a very extended period of time. Part of that has been because we've been seeking to resolve the neutrality issues, but clearly there has been this issue with respect to addressing some of those procedural concerns. We have sought input from colleagues in legal with respect to how we manage and deal with this, because as set out within your officer report, the outline planning permission for the site granted planning permission for obviously the principal development, but also the layout and access. So whilst landscaping was formally reserved for consideration at this stage, the local planning authority considered and assessed those details that were submitted at that stage, and it did form part of the approved plans. So we would concur with the points that this application needs to be materially consistent with those details that have already been approved as far as landscaping is concerned. Clearly, it has to also accord with the layout that's been approved, because that was sought formally. So we have worked with the applicant and the applicant's agent and their team to get to a stage where we are satisfied that the landscaping details are materially consistent with what was approved at the outline stage. Now, clearly, when we're talking about making changes to certain things relating to, ridge heights, and we're looking at, whether there needs to be any retaining features and things like that, that then interfaces with obviously layout, but also potentially landscaping. The Development Management Procedure Order sets out the definitions of those reserved matters, so scale, appearance, layout, landscaping. And specifically for landscaping, it encompasses and requires details of retaining features, earthworks, etc. So clearly, if members at this stage are not satisfied with certain details with respect to positioning of dwellings or their prominence and want changes in that regard, then that obviously has impacts on what we've already approved. So that is the complexity of it. But I guess to answer your question directly, we are satisfied that from a landscaping perspective, we've got to a stage now where the details that are submitted, and we're of the view that they do need to be submitted formally in accordance with the Development Management Procedure Order, are materially consistent with what has already been approved. So it leaves then, I guess, the consideration of scale and appearance, those matters that haven't previously been submitted. Hopefully that helps.
It certainly helps.
Thank you, Councillor Hamblin. Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad it helps you because I am really struggling with this application and I am used to reading lots of reserved matters applications in my day job. However, this has clearly been as a result of in a pickle, really, as to procedurally, and I can see that you found a way forward with this. It does, however, come back for me. First of all, I should probably say I have some sympathy with the applicant as well as the other speakers, Mr. Gardner particularly, with regard to how this has come about. You know, this obviously taken a very long time, the phosphate credit, etc., etc. I would like to get it resolved. However, I am really struggling. I'm looking at the proposed site elevations from March 2025, the amended PL 60 revision A, which appears to be what we're looking to approve. It does clearly show some requirement for cut and fill to enable flat base for these to be built upon, these individual homes. I understand that layout has been approved, but I cannot get a sense from the road, for example, because of the requirement for cut and fill in elements, the ridge heights. I can't see what scale I'm looking at. I'm not too worried about the scale on the side of the bar. You know, you've pointed out what the ridge heights will be from, as you said, ground to the top, as the ward member has said. But because of that topography of the site, those pictures didn't do it justice. From when we were there, it is much more undulating, and there's going to be, obviously, to get a flat platform, some real movement. And I just can't understand what we're being asked to approve. Picture it in my mind, realistically. And added to that, I am concerned that these are very blocky, massed, a blocky mass of a building. They really, I'm very welcome modern developments and modern houses within areas. Some of them can be absolutely fantastic, as we've seen before. We've approved some. But these seem just very bland and the sort of without any kind of roof changes, without chimneys. I'm not necessarily need chimneys, but the houses around there, as has been pointed out, have come forward individually and they do not all look the same. These all, although they've got different finishes on them, are of a mass and look the same. And it does look very suburban, which I am concerned about. I think there is a way to bring forward that layout and that number of houses, but them to look more individual, which then ties in better to the village. So I have real concerns with several bits of this, not necessarily the procedural, because I think you've found a way through there, but with the fact that we're being asked to approve something without understanding what it will look like on the ground with the heights and platforms, which does then go to landscape.
Do you want to comment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just really going to point out one thing that I did refer to within the presentation is that it is a case of, you know, having to deal with the outline planning permission, and obviously that there are conditions attached to that. I mean, one of the conditions are pursuant to the outline planning permission is a condition that is a pre-commencement condition requiring no development. I will read it out. No development in respect of any required earthworks shall take place until details of their formation have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. These details shall include the existing contours and ground levels and proposed grading of land areas, including contours and levels to be formed. Cross sections through the site of the existing and proposed levels must be included to show the relationship of the proposed grading to the surrounding landform and the existing vegetation. Development shall be carried out in accordance with the approved details. So that condition allows for you to understand, you know, essentially the levels of that site. It doesn't explicitly require details of slab levels, finished floor levels. Members could resolve to impose a condition with respect to this reserve matters as far as it relates to scale, but clearly those matters will have to be dealt with together, and whether or not they can be is a potential issue that could come up. But there is a condition, at least with respect to levels of the site.
I heard that the first time round, and what I appreciate what you're trying to do, but we're leaving it then to you. So we were approving something which we then push to you to be content with, even though we potentially may have an issue with the overall scale of it as a result of that. And that's what I am struggling to understand. We're being asked for scale. This is what's the point of this coming to us if we are not being asked about scale and heights and massing and all of those things at this stage, if we're being told to push it to you guys through a condition at a later stage that you're satisfied with. I can't. I'm minded to reject this application on the basis that it is just so confusing. I understand why the applicant would be very reluctant to pull this and submit a new one because of the time it has taken with the phosphate credits. I completely understand, but I think we're in a bit of a pickle with trying to understand how we can approve this.
Councillor Thomas.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Looking at this site with all the contours at the moment, I agree with Councillor Simmons wholeheartedly. I don't think that our developer is making best use of the land. I think plots 1 and 2 will, because of where they are and the height that they're going to be, you can't, within a degree, you can only cut and move so much soil. Because otherwise what's out the back is going to be a massive sort of bank behind you. I have a problem certainly with these with the way that it's landscaped. I don't think it's been made use. I think the houses ought to be close to the access road. I can't see why they're so far up the bank. I do agree with what the local people said, and also plot 10 and plot 9, plot 10 also, again, it's too far up the bank. These are going to be very much, especially in your face, and I also agree, much as I like actually modern buildings, although my job used to be to the lovely old black and white cottages opposite, I think they are very bland. There's no change at all. They're all sort of black slate or dark slate, black. They're not well designed, I'm sorry to say, and I agree that we're being asked to make a decision that we are handing to you to come up with the best solution. I'm also minded to vote against it too.
Yes, but be clear, you need solid planning grounds for that. But can I just say, it's very difficult to know when certain speakers have spoken the vernacular. There's every type of housing in in that community. It's wonderful because everything's different. There is no vernacular as such. But can I now move to Councillor Andrews?
Thank you. I think the site visit was extremely informative because it made you realise the contours of the site. The upper dwellings are going to stand out as you come into Ashburton and drive along that road. I'm sorry, like a sore tooth, I think. The design of the houses, it's a bit difficult to tell, but they seem to be entirely bland, lacking in any sort of character. They probably do better in some suburban area, but really, I really do think that this should be rethought yet again. I'm sorry, but it should.
Councillor Woodall, and then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very interesting. And the site visit, I agree that these buildings are not going to be nestled into the landscape. They're going to be prominent, as was explained by one of the speakers. And also, this Ashburton looks like a typical ribbon development. The houses tend to follow the contours of the road, and they follow the dips and the rises accordingly. There's nothing really that stands out too much. These will stand out, so they will be definitely exceptional. The other thing that I find difficult to understand is, as was put forward, how can they slip in changes to drainage under a landscape appearance and scale plan out in reserve matters? So they've definitely, you can see from the maps, the attenuation pond's gone, so that's different. So if that's not a landscape matter, or for me, everything's an appearance matter, isn't it? If you're saying landscape appearance and scale, everything is appearance. And if that drainage attenuation has been put elsewhere and it's got a hydro break on it, is there a maintenance plan? Does that get done in another reserve session? Is that going to come in front of us in future at another point? Because it's been changed. And it looks like, as it was said, it's been kind of snuck in along with this reserve matters issue. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Woodall. I mean, again, it's been very much a iterative process with this one in terms of the plans that have been received and the plans that have been amended to address the concerns that we've raised about conformity with those approved details. Clearly, scale and appearance are for consideration. Layout has already been agreed. Landscaping needs to ensure that the details are consistent with what's already been approved. So as far as drainage is concerned, there was efforts made to provide, I guess, a detailed strategy as part of this application to satisfy the requirements of the habitat regs and advance a solution in that regard. However, we've come back to the issue that, again, we can't be approving those details because, as you quite rightly say, if we're approving details of drainage, i.e. attenuation basin and other infrastructure, that is a matter that is also considered as part of layout. So there is a condition, a detailed condition on the Outline Planning Permission that requires the details to be submitted. They've been removed from the plans at the present time in terms of the detail, but there is a condition that will deal with the details of that at a later stage. We have the general principles that have been sufficient to advance the habitat regulations assessment. But again, it is trying to find that point where we have sufficient details, but we're not overstepping it and materially changing what has already been submitted.
Right, we'll move on now to Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. I sat on this committee back in August 2016, and I've been hunting around trying to find my notebook from those days, and it appears to have disappeared the way of all things. The latest one I could find was April 2017, and so it's a shame because I was really interested to see what comments I would have made on the previous when we were asked to look at the outline permission. But here we are, was it 9 years later, having to look at it again. When I went on to the site visit yesterday, and can I thank Ollie Jones for his report and his guidance through the site yesterday. But when I went there yesterday, I was concerned, as we all are, where these houses are going to sit within this undulating site. This is a very difficult site to place housing, but it's vital that housing is put on this site because are we forgetting that the government has decided we've got to build 27,000 more houses within the next 10 years, and here's 10 of them to start with. I was encouraged to see that 6 of them are semi-detached. Now, we don't get many semi-detached new housing in this county, which is something to I think, support. What I would say, and going along with some of my colleagues' comments, this is uninspiring, I was going to say, with regard to the architecture. What we need as a planning committee, when an applicant is trying to persuade us to approve his development, is to give us some coloured 3D pictures of what the site would look like when it's dealt with. Yeah, but something a bit different. We had them earlier today at the military site, and they were very pleasant looking designs and all done on computers. And so if they want us to approve something, make it good and make it an attractive proposition for us to approve. However, it could be worse, and I'm sure that the officers aren't going to allow these developments on the north of the site, plots 1, 2, 3 and 4, to be sitting on top of that mound, because that is where the undulations are on the extreme, on the north end. And I'm sure those housings aren't going to be sitting on the top for all to see. We just have to hope that the officers know what they're doing, and I'm convinced that they do, because if they don't, we're in trouble. So I think we really need to think very carefully if you're going to recommend refusal of this. What will come next time? If a new development comes on board, what are they going to put in there? There's room for an awful lot more than 10 on that site, without a doubt. And what we've got is 10. They're not bad, but they're not going to be hugely expensive, most of them. And I think they'll be available for families. There's a school up the road that's well thought of. But we really need to think of what will happen if we refuse it. So I was going to recommend approval.
All right. Is there a seconder for that? Doesn't appear at this particular stage. Anyway, can I just Councillor Engel.
Very, very briefly, Chairman. What struck me about Ashburton was that it was a very discreet village. Even the church is invisible. And this is what is going to define anyone who passes through, define the place for anyone who passes through Ashburton. And I don't think it is a site that Ashburton is likely to be proud of.
Yes, well, that may be the case, but the principle is there already. But that's another matter of development on that site.
It's the question of it's the contours and the height, as people are saying.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see about that. But it also, the problem we have in defending any refusal is the houses almost opposite the entrance to this site, which are bordering on executive type houses. But anyway, right. Are there any other speakers? There are no. We have no recommendation at the moment.
No, not defer.
Yeah, but there wasn't a seconder.
I'd like to recommend refusal of this reserve matters application on the grounds of the height, scale and design of it that does not respect the local vernacular, is not clear as to the overall setting within the landscape context. Although the layout is there, we are not clear as a committee as to the heights within the relationship to the surrounding area, and particularly the blocky vernacular that doesn't represent or reflect the surrounding built form.
All right.
Okay, so we will move that forward, but we do need to just pin some policies to that. So you've got obviously the core strategy policies, but also the emerging NDP policies that you can have a look at, relating to design scale sort of landscape issues. And I think it's from listening to what it says, it's almost it's insufficient information to be able to properly assess scale, as opposed to on that basis. Yeah, and then a design reason. So do you want to have a look at the policies?
I was just going to say, sorry, the Ashburton Neighbour Development Plan, it's emerging plan, but the policies are referenced at paragraph 3.2 of the report.
So the key core strategy policies, I would have a look at. Do the same. So if you look at the landscaping, sort of the last sections of each of the reports, so in paragraph 7.32, we are referencing policies LD1, SD1, SS6. And in terms of obviously scale and design, again looking at the conclusions of that and looking at that policy, we're looking at SD1 core strategy and D1 emerging NDP policy. So that's going back up to paragraphs 7.12 and 7.13. Okay.
If SD1, if there's a requirement to incorporate local architectural details and materials respecting the scale, height, proportions and massing, I don't think it achieves that. I appreciate that that's different to how you view it, but they've picked elements of that, but yeah, not content with that. And then the policy D1 of the emerging Ashburton NDP requires responding to local character and the distinctive rural character of Ashburton, and that's bringing in the way that they're all very similar, brings in a very suburban form which doesn't reflect Ashburton's village and how the development has come forward elsewhere in the village.
Ashburton's a very linear village.
You got LD1 in there as well.
Yeah, and then the LD1, the first point, demonstrate the character and landscape has obviously influenced the design, scale, nature and site selection. So I think they have, to an element, looked at that within the layout to bring it into the bottom of the ridge, into the bottom of the sort of trough of the topography, but we cannot tell, that's the problem, of how much of that is being cut and where the heights are, and that's the problem we're getting at. So I'm not sure whether to use LD1 or because it starts to muddy the water of where we're trying to understand with the topography. There's been some element of that, but that's the problem, we can't tell.
And is that the insufficient information to,
Yeah.
to demonstrate compliance with?
Yeah, I think that would be covered
Absolutely.
under insufficient.
And then were there further ones? We can't go on to the sort of landscaping because that's been, yeah, so I won't touch that. Okay. Sorry that that's so disjointed, but my opinions were forming as we were going through that again. Thank you.
No, that's okay. We'll review that, but move forward with a reason for refusal based on the lack of, the insufficient information to demonstrate that the scale is acceptable in the location, having regard to policies SD1, LD1 and D1, but also in terms of design of the properties, in that they fail to respond to or reflect the local character, and that they're suburban in nature. So we'll have a look at some of the wording around that and reflect that back on those policies.
Thank you, Kelly, for that. Really helpful.
Right. If there are no other comments or wishes to add conditions on that, we'll now, that recommendation, can I now ask the officer if anything further to be mentioned? Right, I'll go to the local member, Councillor Lester, who will be the final speaker.
Thank you, Chairman, and just thank you to the committee for giving much thought to the issues before you, and I respect the view that you're now coming to.
Thank you. And now we'll move to the vote. Can I ask for those in favour of the resolution as outlined, refusal, and the conditions as outlined? Please, those in favour of that resolution, please indicate. Okay. 10 in favour. Against? One abstention. Right. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, thank you all for your attendance, and I wish you a safe journey home. And can I ask that we're